alive. Chase, we're in the Marriott Center right now. Finally, we get a BYU win to talk about. BYU beats Oklahoma State 85-69, and you go, oh, wow, double-digit win blowout. Not all of it was pretty, Chase.
Not all of it was pretty at all. I'd say most of it. Not most of it. There's the middle of 20 minutes there. Maybe not even that. I mean, the first 15 minutes of the game were looking really good. There was all BYU. The end of the first half ended poorly. Just a little recap if you didn't watch it, which I'm sure you all have. Or maybe if you're just box score looking. BYU was up 27 at one point.
27.
This was in the first half, and it was starting to look like it was like 43-15. And I turned to Carter. I was like, "Can we go?" Like, it's like Oklahoma State looks awful. BYU's, they got their mojo back there at home. I shouldn't have said anything because right there, like 5 minutes left in the first half, started to turn. I think it was Oklahoma State going into the second half, and then the first 10 minutes, they went on a 31-9 run.
Yep.
And got within 4, and we were like, I was like, can we go for a different reason?
Yeah.
Like it was
there. It got real tense in the building at that moment. But I know we said, oh man, I don't want to have to talk about this on the podcast about BYU blowing that big lead as a potential positive, but it kind of was a positive, and Kevin Young talked about it in his press conference too, where seeing how they responded and kind of grinding that out and, okay, things are getting a little tough. What's going on here? And they found their way out of it. Now it is easier to do it against an opponent like Oklahoma State. I think that's the overall theme of this is that, look, there's a reason this was a quad 3 home game. Oklahoma State's not a very talented team. Quote from their coach directly, and he was trashing on those guys. He was like, yeah, I mean, he was like, basically like, yeah, man, we're not that good, and yeah, I don't know, I'm ready to get out of Utah. Yeah. That was basically his press conference. He didn't watch.
He wasn't wrong, and which is why we expected, this BYU team to perform and outperform Oklahoma State by a wide margin, and even before the game, like talking about like this line at 13.5 for BYU, we're like, I don't even know if I would take that metaphorically, of course, because we're like, I just don't know about this BYU team right now and what they're doing. And then it was just like a roller coaster of like, oh, like, duh, like BYU's kind of back. I even turned to you. I was like, when they're up like 23 or whatever, and you start to think like, we got to hold our horses on our takes here because they look all the way back. And then they did it for us, and we didn't have to try and convince ourselves that this team's completely fixed, because there's still holes, and we'll get into talk about that. But at the end of the day, you get the win. You needed to get back on track. And the biggest part to me, Carter, and the biggest point of this game was seeing the emotion, seeing the fire in these dudes' eyes when they were making that run late. When the game was in the balance there, 4-6 points, Yegor starts to get hot. He hits shots. They're blocking shots. They're playing good defense. They're on the break, getting dunks, layups, and guys are getting fired up, and they were yelling and like getting each other's faces in a good way. The teammates. So I think you just needed that confidence booster, Yegor especially, but for the entire team to be like, this is what it feels like to play good, fast flowing basketball that they really haven't felt in weeks.
There's a reason they're last in tempo in the Big 12.
Yeah, and so getting that moment where it's just like, okay, you're playing one of the worst teams in the conference, but you just have this moment where you got to kind of get to simulate, not even simulate because it was a real thing. It's a real game that you can't lose this, BYU, and get that feeling of like, we're on a roll. We have momentum here, is a really good thing at the end of the day.
Yeah, absolutely. And a few other things going off this game tonight is, you kind of touched on it there, was the ball movement. There was real ball movement tonight, and it was immediate right out of the gate. There was just some hard cuts and some really hard, tough moving off the ball, and guys were playing for each other. Guys were unselfish tonight. The ball was moving like a hot potato at times, and a lot of the times during this 3-game skid, the ball is kind of just stuck and been stagnant, and there hasn't been a real flow to things. Tonight, there was a real flow to the offense and everything. And going back to talking about that run when it got tight and everything, and Yegor and all these guys to get them out of get out of that hole and go on that run to kind of put things away and make sure they win this game, was Dallin and Yegor look good together, and it showed that, hey, these two guys can coexist together on the court. That's not an impossible thing, and I think we saw the lineup Kevin Young trusts most tonight. That is Yegor, Dallin, Richie, Trevin, and Kaba at the 5. I think that's going to be the closing lineup going forward, and I think he found the lineup he trusts most.
Yeah, and going back to your point about the offense, because that's been like the real struggle. We've been talking for weeks about how stagnant it was running an NBA offense within a college team. It's just not going to work. Right off the bat, from like the very first play, like you have the wings cross underneath the basket, and like all this action was going on, and it was very noticeable that they made that adjustment and made a big deal of it. He scored 85 points in a Big 12 play is pretty sweet. I mean, that's a lot of points. And Oklahoma State's a team who, a reporter asked the Oklahoma State head coach, apologize, I don't even know his name. Like, they're like, you kind of hang your hat on
Steve
defense.
Lutz.
Is it Steve Lutz?
Yep.
He's like, you kind of hang your hat on defense. And Coach Lutz was like, yeah, well, we are last in the Big 12 in defense.
Yeah, I don't know if I've ever seen a coach admit defeat like that really in a press conference. It was like, yeah, dude, I don't know, man. Like, what do you want me to do? Like,
yeah,
the vibe was almost like, I don't get paid enough. Like,
yeah,
that's someone else's problem.
And he had been away from his wife and kids for long. Like, he's on this Utah road trip.
And if you're not living in Utah right now, it is so effing cold here right now.
And it's not even snowing. It's like not even worth it cold.
Yeah, it's just freaking bitter cold. And I forgot my winter coat here. And I'm freezing my nuts off coming in this game. Brutal. But anyhow, yeah, I don't blame him for wanting to get out of here. But we talked about going into this game that this was a can't-lose, must-win game. And it's tough saying that in January, but it was. No question about it. You can't lose this game if you want to have a chance at making it to March Madness without having to make a run in Kansas City. They win tonight, step 1 complete, and tonight was a big confidence booster. That Yegor run he had, that 3 he knocked down, and his box score looked great tonight. You get 10, 5, and 8. That's a great-looking box score, too. A lot of balance scoring, a ton of dudes scoring in double digits. Tonight, the main theme is I think this was a big confidence booster for everyone, especially going into a rivalry game on the road, which I think should be another confidence booster, but it's going to be an intense environment at the Huntsman Center on Saturday. But tonight, I just think it was a lot of positives. Besides that run right there, that was alarming a little bit, but they got out of it, and just people just playing winning basketball and seeing the ball movement and seeing, okay, this is what this team can do. Now, time to go do it on the road. Time to go do it against a quad 2, quad 1 opponent instead of these quad 3 teams.
Yeah, and they have a lot to build on, I think, from this game, because it wasn't perfect in the slightest, but there were so many good things. If you had asked us before, what do we need to see? We were like, we need to see more ball movement and more off the ball movement on offense. We would need to see these guys have some pep in their step, show some chemistry, which they did tonight. We would need to see Yegor Demon kind of find his stroke and find his scoring edge.
He was showing some emotion tonight. I loved it.
So you saw all those things, even if it's like, okay, it was hairy there for a little bit. You pull out the win. You saw what you needed to see. Now you have a chance. Okay, Utah's not as great, but still a quad 1 game right now, Karter, which a chance to win quad 1, who knows if it stays that way, but in any scenario is massive. And so you got to build on these things, but we'll keep talking about tonight, and we'll talk about Utah a little bit later, but getting to see each of those guys and Kevin Young switched up the lineup here, putting Moet Mag as the starter, but again, it wasn't his closer like you mentioned. But you just saw these guys really care about a game, really show. I mean, they always care. I don't want to say and insinuate anything, and my words get twisted, but it was just palpable there in that last 5 minutes of the game, and then you just kind of felt it for them, those feelings, because they're frustrated. It's not a secret that they're frustrated with the way things have gone. And Kevin Young said after the game, he was like, "Look, like I think if a 3 goes down here, we win this game. I think if we get a stop here, we win this game, and here we win this game. But instead, we lost all those games, and so we got to grab wins. We got to string something together. And look, frustrating things happen, and frustrating things happen tonight for this team.
Yep.
Oklahoma State, that stretch, they were red hot.
Yeah.
Dudes were looking like prime Kobe, freaking hitting every jumper they pull up on, and that's frustrating. They responded. They got the stops they needed in the end, and they, most importantly, in my eyes, figured out the offensive end, put the ball in the basket, and you win.
Yep.
And you got a chance here to get on a roll and get 3 wins in a row.
They have a chance to get on a roll, get 3 wins in a row. Got to get that win on Saturday, though. We'll do a preview for that. That'll be out on Thursday. We'll go deep into the Utah game and talk about that. JT talked about something on our interview. If you didn't listen to that, go check it out. Great interview with Jonathan Tavernari. Ton of fun. Great stories on there as well. Go check that out. But he talked about how there's really too many guys getting time on this team because it's eventually, that's why I kept saying all season long, it's you got to get this to 8, max 9 guys you trust on this team. And unfortunately, there's going to be guys that just aren't going to make the cut. And tonight, I think, was a real sign of, okay, there's definitely 8 guys, and he's still figuring out that 9th guy. This rotation is getting trimmed a little bit because it has to in college basketball. There's not enough time.
It's true. You're very right. Like, we don't even see guys that we saw maybe at the beginning of the season. Like, Boskovic is no longer
Elijah
getting
Crawford.
any sort of minutes. Elijah Crawford's not getting any sort of minutes. And so, and then there's guys who are being trimmed down. Obviously, Cannon gets taken out of the starting lineup, only played 7 minutes tonight. A lot of that had to do with fouls, but still, just things getting trimmed down, like you said. And it seems like they really figured it out. And which, again, we've now mentioned 3 times, that closing lineup, which was really effective. And at the end of the day, I think might be the lineup. I think, from my personal opinion, I like Kaba in there for the defensive presence and the presence he is, the threat he is to be a rim runner and to rebound, secure all these rebounds, is one of the best rebounders in the country, right? And then you have Yegor and Dallin to both be running point. The press that Oklahoma State threw late, no problem for BYU and these guys.
No, I know it was like, yeah, if you watch BYU basketball last season, you had a little PTSD. You're like, oh man, they figured out you had to press this team. Oh crap! And then you see Yegor and Dallin, they handled it beautifully.
Yeah, and then you have Richie Saunders and Trevenell, who have become, clearly in my eyes, the 2 best shooters on the team.
Yep.
Richie, I think, I could probably say he's the best shooter on the team right now over Trevin, just because he's shown me more in game that he's knocking these down. And of course, Trevin's going to do his thing always. And so it's kind of what you want in any given situation, offense and defense. You don't need to be switching guys in and out for anything. And could we talk more about Richie Saunders and about like what's he doing for this team?
Yeah, go for it.
Is this team only going to go as far as Richie Saunders takes them?
I still think it's as far as Yegor takes them. I know people are going to say, oh, you guys are just Yegor lovers and everything like that. You guys are biased towards Yegor, and that may be the case, but I still feel like he's still your best player overall. He hasn't been playing the best. Richie's been playing the best, but I think a night like tonight, Yegor takes you over the top.
It's true, and Yegor had an amazing game, like you said, 10-8-5. Richie had 12-2-2, and you almost feel like you almost forgot he was there a little bit.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, quiet game for Richie. And you look, you're like,
he only took 5 shots.
That's a quiet game from Richie. 12 points on 5 shots, and that kind of thing. But also, it was amazing game all around the board. This is what you love to see. You have 18 points from Trevenell. Again, like 18 points from Trevenell. You're like, holy cow, he took 12 shots. You have 10 from Kaba. Did pretty decent on the free throw line.
BYU shot very well from the field.
Very well. They shot over 41% from 3. You have 14 points from Dallin Hall, 8 from Dawson Baker. I mean, you just forget about these guys, and they were filling up the basket. That's what happens when you have this ball movement, when you're getting out in transition. You just find guys, and they were hitting shots. That's what we were talking about. The reason they're shooting in the 20% region from the three-point line is because you're just taking these standstill threes that even if you're open, like there's just no flow and rhythm. Tonight there was flow and rhythm. Guys were coming off of screens, getting to open space and knocking them down. It's proof in the pudding right there.
100%. That's what we've been preaching nonstop is, look, man, anybody who's played pickup basketball, this is the show's called Church Ball. Even when you go play at your local pickup church, it doesn't matter because when you play a game and there's one dude taking all the shots, no one's a ball hog and whatnot, and the people aren't getting their hands wet on the ball, people aren't being able to take shots and whatnot, it's tough to get into your flow and rhythm. And then all of a sudden you get handed the ball and they're like, well, you have the ball this time, take a shot. You're like, I've been taking a shot all day. Like, give me a second, And so, but tonight, man, the ball was moving, and that's what they need to see. I still think it should have been a little quicker, a little faster. And it'll get there. It was a drastic difference from what it has been to what it was tonight, and that needs to continue because this team is designed to play faster, to move the ball quickly, and they have the guys. The IQ on this team is so high. These guys know where each other are. They know how to make these cuts. They know how to play off pick and rolls, pick and pops, and you run all this stuff. And I just think we haven't seen it yet, and tonight was a great example of how and what we can see and the potential of it. The other thing is you do have to take this all with a grain of salt because you don't want to get too blue goggles with this. Is Oklahoma State is the worst team in this conference.
Yeah.
And BYU did give up a 27-point lead at one point in this game. So you do have to take a little bit with a grain of salt. And Oklahoma State on a long road trip. They've been out in Utah for almost a week now. That part is big, but you have some great chances coming forward, and all that matters is you get your confidence up, and once your confidence is high, anything is possible, and you could start knocking off some of these quad one opponents when you get to play teams like Baylor and Arizona and Kansas and try and knock those teams off. But you got to get your confidence back. These are the perfect games to do so. Tonight was a great way to get it back. Saturday is going to be key.
And like we said, these are stepping stones. It's a little late in the season to be doing it, right? You want to be doing this against Florida A&M and Life Pacific and Louisiana Lafayette Tech of University College, right? But you got to do it now. And if there's going to be a chance to do it, this is the chance to do it. If you listen to the podcast, we've talked like 100 times about this game, this stretch right here. So these stepping stones are happening. But like you were saying, you got to take it with a grain of salt. It's not perfect. I have here on the stats, right? BYU 18 turnovers still is an outrageous number.
And Kevin Young mentioned in the press conference too, he's like, at least 6 of those weren't even forced turnovers. They were unforced, just careless passes.
Or like literally passes slipping through guys' fingers.
That's for sure.
And like that can kind of come with like, look, you want to move the ball more? Well, guess what? You got to be ready to catch any pass. You got to find the right guys in the right moments. You got to not get too excited in transition and things like that. So clearly still things to clean up. I thought the defensive performance in the first half was incredible. Swarming. They were able to get to the ball handlers. In the second half, it wasn't great, mostly because Oklahoma State was hitting shots. And I think BYU was comfortable leaving the Cowboys open from three because, let's be honest, they're not the best team. And in the first half, they weren't showing themselves as a threat from beyond the arc. In the second half, they were, and they had to make those adjustments. And Kevin Young talked about that. To their credit, they did make the adjustments when they needed to. And at the end of the day, they did come away with the stops they needed to win the game because it was really close. I mean, 4 points is like a big three from Oklahoma State. All of a sudden, you're really like, okay, this is anyone's game. But it was right on the brink because even though it was 4, it was right. We were like, okay, BYU has to respond here, and we don't feel like it's like completely in trouble yet. And just right on the brink there, and BYU at that moment, took the timeout, come out of it, respond. Okay, they win by 16 or whatever it is.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's take a break and we'll be right back. Let's answer some Twitter questions. Let's look at what the people are saying right now, Chase. Let's go with Carter A at CJAndy33. Yegor hit a 3 tonight. Let's go. We tweeted out the final score. Drop your comments, takes, whatever. And he said, Yegor hit a 3 tonight. Let's go. In all seriousness, that was the game the Cougs needed to win, and it was the best all-around effort in over a week. Let's build on that and get a win streak going. That is a great point. The effort felt real right out of the gates. We talked about it, the ball movement and everything. I think he nailed it, Chase.
I think he absolutely did. That's what we were talking about. It's the effort. It's the showing that you just care so much. Like you die for this game. You want to win this basketball game. So, yeah, great comment. I love that. I'll keep going here. I'll go Riles Mooserton. Again, he never DM'd us, if we're saying that right. So Moose, I'm calling you Moose from now on. Shout out for commenting though. We love you guys. He said basketball is a game of runs. BYU had more of them. Giving up a 20-2 run hurts, but the boys battled back. Defense was much better tonight with wings getting in passing lanes, active hands, tipping balls, and bigs boxing out. DH downhaul and Foose high pick was a bit stale tonight though. I agree with everything you said. I think that the active hands, being able to tip balls, was really great tonight. There was a few steals like from Trevor Nell and Yegor Demon. He particularly gave a really big defensive effort tonight. Yeah, I mean, great comment, Moose. The DH,
Yeah, I think you nailed it.
DH and Foose pick and roll was a little dry. That's why I liked Cable tonight, like I said. But yeah.
And it's nice. We talked about it with JT yesterday when we were, or when was that? Monday we recorded with JT. When we talked about it with him on Monday, he talked about, like, when was the last time you seen BYU go on these double-digit runs and really take over a game? I mean, that's what elite teams do, is you go on these big runs and you put teams away. And we saw that tonight. That's what we needed to see in conference play, and basketball game of runs. Nailed it. Let's keep going here. At the real Grant Farley, shout out the GOAT. Yegor plays better when he's playing when he plays angry like the water boy. He was playing a little angry, especially in that second half on that run. You could feel the frustration because, he said in the press conference, the 3-pointer, like, hitting that didn't really affect him. Look, I'll just be the first one to say it definitely affected him. It's definitely in his head. Got a little bit of the yips, and that's okay. You get over it, and hitting that 3 tonight was huge, and you could just feel the relief come off of him, and the crowd was pumped. Even when he hit that free throw, the crowd was like, let's go. And shout out the Marriott Center, shout out BYU fans, shout out the Rock tonight. Everybody was behind this team 1,000% on a super cold late night Tuesday night tip-off against the worst team in the conference, and they showed out tonight.
Almost 17,000 people. And still showed up.
Yeah, and they it was a great performance by the crowd tonight. Gave a huge boost to the BYU players, and I genuinely think they helped a ton tonight.
Yeah, I know this was he makes a good point, and he was being funny, which I love it. Shout out Waterboy, it's a great movie. But it's absolutely true. Yegor has like spunk to him. I think people don't see because he's such a nice guy and he's pretty soft spoken in these interviews.
He's got that dog.
Whatever. He's European, man. He's got a little Luka like fu to him, where he's like. He's like, he talks crap on his way back to the bench kind of deal. And he was talking his stuff tonight, and he let his game do it for him. So,
I'll go next. This is a great question. I think this has been a pressing question from a lot of BYU fans. From Michael Jones at BYU fan 112. Demon had a nice run for a bit, but it still feels like he and Catchings are struggling. Big picture, do you feel like BYU's chances at top recruits will take a hit if Demon and Catchings have a bad year? Let's address the first part first. I think Demon redeemed himself a little bit tonight. We should address the Cannon catching stuff because Kevin Young touched on it a little bit in the post-game press conference. Shout out Mitch Harper. Great question in the presser. Talked about, okay, look, Cannon tonight came off the bench, and then he had that weird flagrant foul stuff, and then he got 3 fouls very quickly and was never really able to get into the game. I think the game – I agree with Kevin Young. I think the game flow did have a lot to do with it tonight where, look, those guys were – once they started getting back on that run, you don't want to change the lineup. You don't want to change the mojo. Let them run. And so he wasn't necessarily needed in that aspect, but it's some weird – it feels like something weird was going on.
So I feel like something's been weird. This weird has been going on for a couple of weeks, just with Cannon's game in general. It obviously hasn't been flowing and hasn't been working. And like, I feel for him because it's tough. Because you look at your own stats, right? And he's looking, he's like zeros across the board. I only played 7 minutes. I got 3 or 4 fouls, and he's not pleased with his performance. Like it's obvious, and he's trying to figure it out. But it seems like the team was like, okay, we just don't. It's hard to say. I don't want to say the wrong thing. They were just doing what they were doing without him on the floor at that moment. Like you said, you don't want to screw up this lineup that is working. And so it was like, hey, look, sometimes it's just not your game. And tonight was like, it's really just not your game. Like you had the fouls, and we're just gonna kind of do this without you.
And I think something to touch on what's going on with his game, because the other thing is he's still so young, and he's going through this stretch right now, and like I said, Kevin Young talked about it as well. He's going through it right now a little bit, kind of in, just trying to figure out how to get out and get on top and get his confidence back and everything. NBA fans will really understand this. It reminds me of Andrew Wiggins the year after the Warriors won the title, where you go, what happened to Andrew Wiggins? What? Every single move he made on the basketball court that year with the Warriors he was almost second guessing himself. And when he was so elite with the Warriors and on that finals run against your Celtics, he wasn't.
You didn't have to say that.
He wasn't thinking. He was just playing, and it was in the flow, and he wasn't second guessing himself in these spots. And he's so purely talented, Andrew Wiggins, and so is Cannon Catchings. Everybody can see that talent, and I feel like he's just second guessing himself a little bit because his confidence is taking a hit right now, and I think that's why he's struggling. He's got to figure out a way to get out. we'll see if that happens.
We'll see if it happens, and I got faith that it does.
Yeah.
He's just so dang talented. And Kevin Young, if he knows anything, it's how to work with super talented players and make them work well together, fit well together. So to address the second part of your question, Michael, I'd love to sit here and be like, no, like don't worry. Look, if things aren't going well for the stars on the team that you recruited and your team's not winning, yeah, it's going to hurt recruiting. It is.
So there's two things to this. This kind of becomes a much bigger conversation. One part is I agree that it can hurt your recruiting because the obvious examples are, look at Washington. They had Markelle Fultz. They were getting random and big time NBA guys and top NBA or top high school recruits year after year in Washington, but could never win with them. Could never really do anything with them. And now look at Washington. They're bottom of the barrel in the Big Ten. LSU, they bring in Ben Simmons, bona fide first overall pick, and everything. They don't make a March Madness run. It doesn't really work out that well there. So that does take a hit. The other side of this is, and also let's address the AJ thing. AJ's not leaving. Like, he signed and everything. That has, whatever happens the rest of this season has nothing to do with whether AJ stays or goes. It doesn't matter. Especially how Demon or Catchings plays. It does not matter. But the other side of that equation is, if a team has enough money, does it actually matter whether they had look, it didn't work out with their first couple years of guys, but if the money's there, the guys are still going to come. The issue is, what kind of guys are you getting at that point?
It's true. I mean, you want to find guys that fit your culture and find guys that are there for the right reasons and that play well in your system.
Especially at Brigham Young University.
Especially. So you're absolutely right, Carter. I mean, BYU set themselves up really well recruiting-wise. And look, if you're a BYU fan and you're worried about, is this going to take a recruiting hit? Look, like you just BYU is not used to being a great recruiting spot anyway. And now all of a sudden, BYU is like in the mix for the biggest guys. In fact, they just landed one of the biggest, and now you're worried about recruiting? Like, I'm not calling out you for commenting at all. I'm just saying, like, it's never been better for BYU. In fact, this probably might be the peak, because you just landed a lottery guy and you landed the number one overall recruit.
Never put a salary cap on your life,
No, that's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying in 2 years from now, you could be like, this class wasn't as good as last year. It's like, yeah, well, AJ DeBounce didn't commit this year.
Yeah.
But the momentum is there, and Kevin Young clearly has a pull to these guys. And so if for some reason they continue, Jaeger Demon and Cannon Catchings just had abysmal years, I don't think it'd take that big of a hit. If continue to happen over time, like with AJ and some of these other guys coming in, then you start to have the conversation. But to answer your question, right now, I think it's fine. I think at the end of the day, those guys are still going to the league, and that's what's really going to put people on notice.
The Catchings one, we'll see. I don't know what will happen there and whatnot. If the season ended today and the draft was tomorrow, Jaegor's probably still a top 10 pick, guaranteed lottery.
Probably, yeah.
And he hasn't had a great year so far, and that's the thing. It's not going to really matter how much he really plays the rest of this year, because NBA scouts know the talent and just know, hey, his game fits the NBA just much better than it does in college.
And I'm not saying NBA scouts are disregarding what he's doing in college, but they're looking a lot at like the Madrid days. They're looking a lot at his pro play.
Yeah, because I mean, he jumped up to 2 or 3 on a lot of boards during some of the easier part of the schedule, and now during this skid a little bit, he's fallen down to the 8 to 10 range on a lot of draft boards right now. So like, they are watching and everything, but I mean, I don't see him falling out of the lottery, and therefore I don't think it necessarily matters, but I still think it's a great question. So shout out Michael Jones for that one. Andrew Sorensen at @A_Sorensen89 said, it's pretty clear that the aggressive they are on offense, the better they do. Heading into Utah this weekend, they have to keep that up. No more running the offense through Foose. I agree to a certain extent, because sometimes it can get a little stale when it's the Foose post up and whatnot. But if the Foose post up is working, keep going.
Keep going.
That's it. It's pretty simple.
It's also just like, it's kind of your bread and butter sometimes, when you're like, look, like, we don't have to do this all the time, but you answer this question. if it's you need 2 points and you're looking at this BYU team, who do you want the ball to have the ball? Your most short 2 points on this team, guess what, people? It's still Fousseyni and Troy posting up. I don't want to hear anything else. He's the most.
I had to think.
What does he shoot the baby hook clip? 70% at least?
Let me think for a second. Yeah, it's the right one, but I had to think. My goodness.
I'm just saying, like,
no, it's fine. Seriously, seriously, it's fine.
This dude is acting offended. Listen.
No, I'm not mad.
Oh my gosh. Listen, the Foos post up. I agree because I said this was a Kaba game. I wanted to see Kaba more than Foos tonight, and that's just from the matchups. But at the end of the day, the most short 2 points for BYU basketball is Foos, left low block over the left shoulder, baby hook, 2 points. It's just what happens. It's what happens.
So he left 5 comments. Oh, shout out Andrew for that comment. By the way.
Our guy Clark
left 5 comments. I'm going to read them all because he put a lot of effort into this, and he deserves to be heard.
It's for you, Clark.
I think it's good stuff as well. So, at Clarkster Stew, hang with me, folks, all right? He said, this is more big picture item, but I feel like we are experiencing the growing pains of what is going on in Provo vision, this Provo vision Kevin has. It is obvious that our guys play better together under the scrappy, fire-at-will, no clear-cut star player identity BYU is known for a while, i.e. the Pope days last year where there was no go-to guy at the end of games. It was who's hot right now, and who's open.
Not just the Pope days, the last 10 years of BYU basketball. Yeah.
I feel like in past years, like, Tyler Haws gets the ball, Jimmer gets the ball. Ironically, Matt Carlino gets the ball. That's if you guys question our knowledge, I think we redeemed ourselves right there. Anyhow, I don't know if we're quite there yet as a program. The fan base definitely isn't. To put out these star prospects, we just don't seem to have the right style for them, and I think that has been demonstrated with Yegor in catchings. Tonight, in my opinion, we ended up defaulting to how we played last season, and it worked like a charm. Obviously, we hit some bumps in that second half, but it felt like the 23-24 BYU win to me. To me, it shows we maybe aren't ready to fully implement KY's vision and system yet. This isn't to say that we shouldn't bring in top recruits, of course. I just think that we are experiencing some growing pains. Tonight was a needed win, and although I don't expect a tourney bid, tonight felt like a baby step to being the team we want to be with AJ next year. Very long-winded, but happy with the boys battling, and we needed to show some adversity under pressure. Hope we can shock some of our better conference opponents in the games to come. Great comment.
Great comment, Clark. Thank you very much for taking the time to comment all that. And I agree with everything you said. I mean, it was very well read.
It's what we've been talking about. It's the ball movement. It's not even necessarily the last year's system versus KY. Kind of is the KY, because the KY system's a lot more ISO heavy and whatnot. And it's just more of an NBA thing, and you got to move the ball in college. And he said it today in the press conference. The pass is faster than the dribble. Guess what? It's been a lot more dribbling than passing recently. And tonight we saw, hey, when you pass the ball and you do these things, you're right. And it was a little reminiscent of last year's team a little bit, but with guys like Yegor and stuff, had its own little flavor to it.
Yeah, it was like last year's team, but you also had someone who was elite at pick and roll.
Yeah,
and a guy who could catch any lob. That's
why I was going to say, like, the thing about the last lob threat, like Yoli.
Yeah, seriously, the last real lob threat. I mean, if BYU didn't put up the volume that maybe last year's team did, they only shot, I think, 28 threes. You can correct me if I'm wrong. Whereas last year they were putting up sometimes 37, 38. But they were shooting at a higher clip because of this inside-outside thing they have going. So, yeah, Clark, I agree with everything you said. I also agree with your visions into the future. I think that the KY's system, his whole philosophy, look, it takes a while for any program to really catch up. I mean, some guys have very good success early on, and maybe it's just a perfect fit your first year. But in college and laying the groundwork here and in dealing with these guys who are coming from two different walks of life, it takes time. And I think he's absolutely right. And we as the fans aren't ready for it, like you said. And the program is just going to continue to build around what he has and what he brings to the table, which is a lot of really, really good stuff, obviously.
And he talked about next year with AJ and everything, and the vision for it is it's got to be a blend of this, like Clark talked about, where it's got to be a blend of KY can implement his system where it's a little more ISO heavy stuff, implemented with the more ball movement side of things where, look, AJ is going to be that guy where, hey, give him the ball and he can get you a bucket.
Yeah.
And those guys don't come around very often, especially at his level. But you also have to have that ball movement. It can't just be AJ bail us out, because that's not going to work, and it never will. And they'll understand that. They're a smart coaching staff, and they're going to be able to figure that out. And obviously, because if we're thinking it, they're definitely thinking it. They're not even thinking about that. They're thinking about right now. They're thinking about beating Utah on Saturday. And the last thing I wanted to pose here, Chase, he said, although I don't expect a tourney bid. Am I wrong for expecting a tourney bid?
I mean, it'd be a quick turnaround from some of the things we were saying Saturday evening, Carter. But
no, but I mean, I think at this point it is tough to expect it. But
what would you put the percentage at tourney bid right now? Out of 100%, what is your Carter Bond statistics? KB Analytics. It comes straight from the dome. What is your percentage? BYU makes a tourney.
35%.
Okay. So look,
but
decent
I'm
odds.
talking about this season as a whole with everything going into it. Like I don't care about the three game loss. I'm talking about the season as a whole. It is a disappointment if you don't make March Madness.
Yeah.
It's a field of 68. Like what I did there. You make the tournament for the amount of money that's been put in this team, the amount of resources, that getting the coaches, the recruits, the talent on this roster. You need to make it to March Madness. I think that's a failure if you don't make it.
And they know that. I think in college especially, right, every college football team is thinking, let's make the playoff. Like, that's huge. I mean, not everyone, every power team. And
that's a little trickier, though. Making March Madness is much easier than making the 12th.
I know,
playoff.
but what the point I'm trying to make, and you're right, but the point I'm trying to make is that's everyone's goal. Like, this coaching staff is thinking, they're like, we need to make the NCAA tournament. It's not like they're like, oh, we have no goal. We don't care about. No. They care about that, and they know what it takes to get that bid, and they know how important these games are. So to put it at ease, they're going to do everything they can to make it to that NCAA tournament. So that means it is likely, not likely, but it is more likely to happen with that fact.
I think we're having two separate conversations here, because I'm saying I expect this team should. The expectation is this team should be in there. And if they do not, it is a disappointment.
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying.
Okay. Well, yeah.
Obviously,
I'm just saying, is the expectation you will make it? Like, you yourself, you said 35%.
No, I would still, like I said, will they make it? Probably 35, 40%.
Yeah.
These next two games will really determine how I feel about that. That percentage could go way down to like 10% or up to like 50, 60%, because you have a chance at a quad 1 win on the road. If they beat them by like a decent margin, though, that does drop to a quad 2. That's how stupid the net rankings are, but It's still a borderline quad 2, quad 1 win. Go get that. It's a rivalry game. You can't lose that one. This Utah team stinks. JT said they stink. We said they stink. They stink. If you lose that game, big time trouble.
Big time trouble. Got to win it.
Got to win.
Got to know. All right, last comment here from our guy Jack. Our guy Jack Carpenter.
Oh yeah, of course.
If you got to see the visual for this, we'll put this up on the screen right now if you're watching live on YouTube or Spotify or wherever. I think we all know the reason why you won that game. The Dallin Hall Foose 2-man game shows promise, but is a little stagnant at times. Again, we've covered that. The very astute observation, Jack. We play the best when we have assisted buckets. How can we build off of that? And then, of course, here's a picture of the Costco guys underneath the stanchion.
That might need to be our new Twitter header.
Might. I think it will be after tonight. But great comment, great question, Jack. And I think we've been talking about it this whole night. It's been the ball movement. It's been guys being unselfish and everyone getting involved and not being afraid to attack. And I'll let you stay with this right after this, Carter. I think the big thing that opens up spacing, because you can just pass it around the perimeter all night long, it's the penetration.
Mm-hmm.
And guys were not afraid. Dallin, Richie, even Mag at times, right? He knows pump fake, go to the basket. That's when the things get open. That's where you get those assists.
Yep.
And so continuing to be aggressive towards the basket, but then finding the open man, I think, is the key there.
Yeah, and I want to point this out too. I don't think it was like these dudes are selfish players, because like I just think it was the nature of the game. And in the moment, they thought, okay, the only way I can score here is I got to put up a shot. I got to put up a shot. And a lot of the times they were draining too much of the shot clock, and then things would get frantic at times. They were attacking early in the shot clock tonight, too, as well. And I don't need to repeat what you said. The ball movement tonight was the difference.
It was the difference. And it needs to keep happening. I think it's become pretty clear. BYU needs to do this in order to not just win games, but like be successful for the future. I mean, every team needs to do that. I mean, let's be honest.
Every team needs to score more than the other team.
Yeah, I think if BYU does that, they're in a pretty good spot.
If they score more than the other team?
Yeah. I've never what are the analytics on that? What are the analytics on that?
I mean, Stephen A would. That's a hot take, dude. I mean, yikes. Anyhow, all right. Make sure to subscribe. We're done here. They're turning the lights out on us here at the Marriott Center. It's late. Subscribe at ChurchBallPod, at Chase_Roger0, at CarterB8. Hit that subscribe button, the like button, everything. We will do our Utah preview. That'll be out on Thursday on all the Field of 68 podcast YouTube channel, on X, whatever you call it, Spotify, Apple, wherever you listen. Hit the subscribe button. Tune into the Utah show. Tune into the JT one. It's a great episode, and we will see y'all Thursday.